Good morning, my name is Paddy Nixon, the Vice-Chancellor here at the University of Canberra, and I'm here to speak with Michelle Grattan about a week in politics. Good morning, Michelle.
Hi, Paddy.
Yes, it's been a very interesting week with Senate estimates, obviously, and question time being an interesting, challenging one with conversations around, obviously, Brittany Higgins, vaccine rollouts, and a number of other things. But one of the things that's obviously in the news very specifically is the COVID outbreak in Victoria, and it's now moving into something like a 7-day lockdown. And Anthony Albanese and the Labour opposition are obviously now using this and challenging the Prime Minister and how they've been reacting to it. But before we move on to that, I'd like to have a little bit of a look at the Hunter by-election.
Seems ages ago and it was only Saturday.
Only Saturday, absolutely. And of course, it looks like the Nationals will have a lead in that one and they'll come out on top. But Labour only got 21% of the vote, or that's what it looks like. Does this pose a challenge nationally for Anthony Albanese?
Yes and no. To start with the no, it is a state by-election and it was fought mainly on state issues, and the state government, Gladys Berejiklian, very popular for the handling of COVID. And also this has been a national seat for some 9 decades, and well before the Nationals were even the Nationals, they were the country party. So it has to be put in perspective. However, politics is about psychology, and what this has done is start a fresh debate or give momentum to the ongoing debate in the Labor Party about why it has such a low primary vote generally, and about how it should be pitching, particularly in areas where you have coal, and this was a coal seat. Mind you, they ran a coal miner as candidate, so you could say, what more can you do? But I think that it is difficult for Anthony Albanese at that level. And of course, it also shows again that incumbent governments are doing very well during the pandemic. And of course, Scott Morrison is hoping to capitalise on that, and looks as though he is at the moment when the election comes around.
And then this week, we also announced that they'll be closing the embassy in Afghanistan on the back of pulling the troops out of Afghanistan. Is that justified, and is it even wise?
The government is justifying this on the basis of security, saying that the security situation there is likely to get worse and it won't be able to guarantee the protection of Australian diplomats. I think it is not wise. Yes, there's a security problem, but they operate in a pretty safe compound, and if the government was really worried about security, then they could move in with the Americans, as happened some years ago for a while. But it does send a really bad message, I think. We've been in Afghanistan for the most of 2 decades, and we've lost soldiers there. Prime Ministers from both sides have emphasised in the past how important that conflict was to us. They went on multiple times to visit our troops, and now we say, well, it's not really worth maintaining even a small embassy there. It's only 15 to 20 Australian diplomats. So you got this statement earlier in the week and the thing's shut today. Today's the last day.
Well,
so
I didn't realise it was that quick.
Very quick. So I think that it is a bit of a slap in the face to Afghanistan, and I think it also raises questions about whether this is very respectful to the many thousands of Australians who fought in that conflict.
So the report from the Senate inquiry into the Australia Post CEO Christine Holgate issues, and she was the focus of vitriol from the Prime Minister for awarding a number of executives, Cartier watches, for winning a multi-million-dollar contract for Australia Post. The report says that the Prime Minister, shareholder ministers, and the board should apologise to Christine Holgate. Do you think there's any chance that she's going to get these apologies?
Absolutely no chance, certainly, that the Prime Minister is going to apologise, or the ministers, or I think the board. I think that the report makes some solid points, but I would note that it's a committee dominated by the opposition and Greens. The government had a minority on that committee, and they had a dissenting report, which of course differed from the majority report. So it came down in a very political way. But I think the steam, or a lot of the steam's gone out of this issue for a couple of reasons. Firstly, things have moved on, and specific issues like this often don't last that long. But also, Christine Holgate has taken another job as CEO of one of the competitors to Australia Post. So she's still, I think, in mediation with Australia Post, and I saw a report she's seeking quite a large amount of compensation, but the fact that she has another high-flying position, I think, does reduce the heat.
And I suspect if she's actually in mediation at this point, even if there was going to be apology, it wouldn't be now, because it would impact those conversations, I suspect.
Well, that's right, but the Prime Minister isn't in the business of giving those sorts of apologies.
So, and then the final issue, which we sort of hinted at the beginning, and obviously we all feel for Victorians at this point, going into a 7-day lockdown again. I mean, they've been hit the hardest of all of the Australia in this context. The conversation is really about whether the vaccine rollout and proper quarantine facilities, which are a federal responsibility, can be the blame for this particular breakout. In particular, if they'd have been in place, if the vaccine rollout had gone quicker, then this might not have happened. Do you think this is a challenge for the Prime Minister?
I think it is a challenge because it goes to hotel quarantine, and the breakouts have come from there over the months, and not from Howard Springs, which is that facility in the Northern Territory, which is isolated and very special to the purpose. So I think the pressure is really on for the federal government to get more facilities going that don't involve hotel quarantine, and of course it's in talks with Victoria about such a facility. But the rollout has been slow. There have been lots of glitches. Even the nursing homes haven't been entirely covered, and they're a federal responsibility. The whole rollout is being driven by the federal government, even though the states are involved in doing some of the jabs. But the government, I think, is under a lot of pressure. And this week, for example, the medical advice about not having the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine too close together, you're supposed to have 2 weeks between, that was changed so that the last of the nursing home patients, especially in Victoria, could be vaccinated ASAP. So they said, oh, well, even if you have them very close together, it doesn't matter. There was a certain desperation, I think, to get those final Victorian aged care residents and workers done, because they are so vulnerable in that sector.
And do you see a sense of a shift, because the Prime Minister and the government have been lauded for how well they've looked after Australia during the pandemic, but now the issues are in the vaccine, and is that taking the gloss over off that particular?
I think there's more blame coming on the federal government, because the vaccine rollout is so much its responsibility, and quarantine is a federal power, even though it's been done by the states in this particular case. But when there's praise of how the whole thing's been handled, some of that, a lot of that, has to, of course, go to the state premiers, who in particular cases were quite tough. Now, they were criticised over closed borders and so on, but I think that the closed borders really helped Australia contain the virus from spreading around the whole country. And of course, the Prime Minister has become a convert to keeping the international border closed, and that was a matter of some debate a week or so ago, although that debate sort of faded in light of what's happened in Victoria.
Well, look, Michelle, there's still a lot more we could have discussed that went on this week. That's been absolutely fascinating, and I look forward to chatting to you again.
Thanks very much, Paddy. Another big week coming up with Parliament sitting again next week.
Absolutely, yes.